Hello, everyone. Hello. My name is John McGrath. I'm Artistic Director here at Factory International, and welcome to a special edition of our occasional afternoon Saturday series, Artists in Times of Upheaval. We're all going to introduce ourselves today with our pronouns and a little bit of audio description, which is always my favorite bit. So my pronouns are he, him, and I am a small, pale-skinned guy with grey hair and a big nose in a black shirt. I'm really pleased to introduce four amazing artists today, each of whom live in the region. Artists in Times of Upheaval is a program that is an opportunity to talk to artists who are engaging with the world that we're in all of its struggles and upheavals, and to talk about how they live and work as artists in this moment. The events that we've had so far have all been one-to-one conversations, but this particular session is focused on the experience of a range of artists in our region who've been living through what everyone's been living through in recent months. But now I'm going to hand over to Keisha, who will introduce the rest of the panel.
Hello, good afternoon. Thanks, John. Lovely intro there. Whilst my panel is getting comfy, I will do my pronouns, which are she, her, and my audio description. I usually say I'm a 160 centimetered woman with braids that usually have some kind of fantastical colours. This time it's blue, and clips and things in them, just because why not? Why not, eh? I've been told I've got big eyes, and I'm wearing a very colourful outfit, loads of yellows and pinks and things. Right, so it's not about me, it's not about my outfit, is it? It's about this conversation, which I feel very privileged that John approached me and said, would you host this discussion? It's very much needed, and it's always tricky, isn't it? Because you want to have these kind of discussions, but you know that they're also uncomfortable. So I'm just going to say that and put that out there. But it's beautiful that Factory want to hold this space for us and for you. So we're going to spend the next hour just unpacking what it means to be an artist in these tricky, tricky times. And hopefully it will model something for you and you take something away. And just to let you know that this space is a social space, so please do not feel that you have to rush away afterwards. You can stay, you can have a cup of tea, and we can continue the conversation. So we're going to open it out now to my fabulous panel. So we're just going to go along, and if you want to just tell us who you are, that would be fab. So we'll start here.
Yo, hello. Safe, hello. My name's Jardel Rodriques. I'm 27. I'm from South Manchester. I'm a poet. I make music as well. My full-time job, I'm a youth worker. I don't know if I've got to give one of them audio description things, but I feel like it's probably maybe not too far from what John said, except my hair's a bit darker, I've got a beard, and I'm wearing a white shirt. Happy to be here. Looking forward to having a conversation. Come on.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Mahboobeh Rajabi. I am an artist and creative entrepreneur. So it's so difficult to explain what we do, but actually I run an organization called DPACT, and I'm very interested in supporting the communities and telling the stories that need to be heard. So that's me.
My name's Keith Saha. My pronouns are he, him. I am a 50-odd-year-old British Asian guy with a beard, glasses, dressed in bit green and denim today. What do? I am Artistic Director of 20 Stories High Theatre Company, based in Liverpool, working with culturally diverse, working class artists, participants, and I am a writer and director as well.
Great. Okay, so the first question, I thought I'd start us off easy, just to give us a sense of how you're feeling today. If you were a piece of art right now, what would you be? What poem or song or visual delight would you say that you are? Yeah?
You're looking at me, yeah?
Yeah, I feel like you've got
I
an
was
answer.
gonna say I was gonna do food. I was gonna say like popping candy, but I thought, oh no, I need to think of a creative response as well. But I'd say I was thinking about this is Asian Dub Foundation song "Real Great Britain," because for me it's summing up why we're here, what's happening today in London, identity, celebration, joy, and activism. About who we are and what we're doing and what our identity is, what it means to be British.
Thank you. Who wants to go next?
I go next because I have this problem of being structured actually to be in order. So for me, when you asked that question, I thought about I work with an incredible visual artist who is in Manchester. She's an Iranian artist who did a visual art during the project we did during COVID, and it's called Artist 2020 50-50. Because, if you put it like a shadow of the 20s, 50-50. So it was really creative. What she did, a painting, including so many Persian poetry and visuals, but it's all get together beautifully. But when you get into it, you would realize it's very chaotic. It's very chaotic, and this is how I feel. And also with everything that currently happening in the Middle East, just with Palestine, and I've kind of present myself with that visual image.
Thank you. Jardel?
If I was a piece of art, I think about this piece of art a lot, but I would be Allen Ginsberg's poem, Howl. And Allen Ginsberg was part of what's known as like the Beat generation of poets, who were basically a bunch of like gay hippies in New York in the 60s. It's very reductive, but in a nutshell, that's what they were. And the poem Howl is almost like this desperate prayer, this plea, and part 2 of the poem, there's 3 parts, introduces this figure called Moloch, who's like this bull-headed god. And in Ginsberg's poem, Moloch is this machine, yeah? And he wakes up inside of the machine. We all wake up inside of the machine. And sometimes I feel like I live in a fucking machine, one that doesn't care about people, one that doesn't see people, it only cares about money, yeah, and production. But also inside of this machine is art and, people's kindness and people's eyes and the things that give us warmth and the things that give us love and hope, and without this backdrop of bullshit that we live inside of sometimes, maybe these drugs, like being able to look into someone's eyes wouldn't be as potent in it. So yeah, I'm feeling kind of howlish. Yeah.
Nice choices, everyone. And I feel like I should only contribute because it's a difficult question, so I should do that as well. So there's a short story called The Ode Woman by, I think, Daniel Calms, and I feel like that it's very repetitive and weird and surreal, but it was written in resistance. So he was very much in a space of war. He grew up, I think, in the development of the Soviet Union, and he just started writing these really surreal, random short stories. So I feel like that. Okay, so my next question. I know a few artists who've told me stories where they've used their art forms in conflict management situations. So there's a poet that I know called Romney Smith, and she was in the middle of an argument and she just started singing. And I remember speaking to Barbara Israel, and he said that he was in an event and the fight broke out and he just started beatboxing. And it just shifted the situation. And I'm just wondering if you've ever done that with your own artistry, or if you've seen it and what you felt that it brought to the situation. Keith, you want to go?
Yeah, really good question. I think this made me really think about my own practice and our practice. I don't think we address conflict resolution or conflict management in the space directly, but more indirectly, or what's that long-term solution. So the example that came to mind, we did a piece called Black with a Manchester artist that you might know called Chunky a couple of years ago, and it was a story about a young white woman in Liverpool who was being radicalised by her dad who was in the EDL. This was probably about 6 years ago now. And we were taking that into sort of lots of white spaces, and he was in the space making music while she told her story. And there were moments that he was coming and telling parts of the narrative, but at the end, he played his music and he didn't directly address what was happening, but we just felt that collaboration with him was managing conflict resolution sort of like indirectly, for him to go into those predominantly white spaces and play his music and talk about his fictional but also lived experiences. Hopefully we knew that would do something different to the space if we were just telling that story from a white lens. So, but hopefully that had a long-term effect, an immediate thing that did, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Go.
Yeah, so I have to go back years ago when I was a student in Iran, because during Ahmadinejad presidency, it was moral officers a lot in the street. And when I was studying theater, we had a course of a street theater. And it was not only me, it was actually the group of a student that basically we had to kind of pop up in public spaces. And we've had one of my classmates was so good he played basically an act that he was really good in crying. So he actually kind of made people kind of pay attention to his crying. And one of our other fellows was really good in laughing. He had really this heart laughing. And also the girls hold on the space to also like do a bit of interaction. And we used to go because we really wanted to make sure he wouldn't get as a president. So we had to kind of think up about the way to get the attention of the people. So I've realized the power of the street theater and just pop up. And he used to cry, and then the people would like, what is the problem? Like he had to act like something really wrong with him, and all of us would act, and then somebody would start really laughing and created a paradox, and then we had a statement to tell to the people, this is how Iranis look like, we really live in paradox, so can you please think about the future of the country? And when you kind of talk about these really elements of acts of art, that moment was really, really powerful, because just a little basic human thing that you can, and we used to do arguments as well, but actually because he's crying and the way that he could take the attention was really powerful, we realized that the argument or a couple fighting is not working, it's not that sort of interesting, because the people can just ignore it, like if a couple has a fight. So we experiment that, but we actually create a sketch and be going to different places to kind of be as a pop-up and then read people that a statement.
Jardel.
Yeah, this is a tough question still, I'm not going to lie. But a bit like Keith said, I feel like art facilitates a conversation indirectly a lot of the times. But myself, I feel like if I'm going to, if I relate to the question of, in like conflict management or conflict resolution, sometimes I feel like my art, the sort of style that I like to write in, is almost to incite a conflict by inciting a conversation. It's by sending a jab at the things that I'm angry at. It's by setting something on fire that I want to see burn. But yeah, I guess I've seen it more in terms of internal conflict management. Using. So in the youth work that I do, we do a lot of art therapy. Do you know what I'm saying? Working with these kids who've got a lot of shit going on upstairs. Yeah, and I feel like art is just a great way of releasing. But like, you've got so much steam in your head and in your body. It can be turning that fucking valve and letting a bit of it out. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Thank you. I don't know why, but the example that's come into my head whilst listening to you guys is this hula hoop that I brought into the office when I used to work at Contact as a producer. Because sometimes it just used to get really stressy. And everyone was like, they're doing 1 million projects and writing funding bids, and everyone's just like, oh. And I just used to bring this hula hoop in and just have it at the side. And if anyone was having a bit of a moment, I was like, do you know what? Just do a bit of hula hooping. Why not? It's just, it's like you need a palate cleanser. Like an emotional palate cleanser. You need to do something that's abstract, that just takes you out of what you're doing, and also just minimizes stuff, just gives you a bit of a perspective. It's an email or it's a funding bid. Like, it's not the end of the world, is it? Were you
You
gonna
should have
say
brought it
something?
here today.
How many could you do? Did you count how many? You...
I'm pretty good.
Go ahead.
So yeah, I used to stand in my in front of my house when I was little and give myself like aches and whatever, just stood there, just hula hooping. So you shouldn't try and compete against me. But it's for other people. That was the invitation. But yeah, I was just thinking, I thought I'd have a different response, but literally I just kept thinking about that hula hoop. I was like, oh yeah, that is an example of that conflict management. And I think also it's that demonstration of what we're talking about today, in that I never stop being an artist. I'm always an artist. I was talking to someone about this the other day. They were saying that they took on a job for an organisation, an arts organisation, but they've stopped doing music. And I was like, why? And they were like, I just feel like, I've not got time, or this or that, or I won't be taking, I need to be like a bit more serious now. And I'm just like, I just never, it's just not up for grabs. And particularly in difficult situations, I actually feel privileged that I have those things that I can draw upon to distinguish the tension, or to allow people to feel differently. But yeah, so let's go towards the bulky question of this discussion. The reason why we're here, the reason why John invited us to come, is because this year has been astronomically difficult, right? So we can't say that previous years have not been difficult, but there's just been a lot this summer. It's felt quite condensed, let's say, and it's ongoing, even this week. Keith, you rightfully mentioned the trial, the result with Kaaba, the response from Keir Starmer about reparations, what's happening in Iran, and that's come off the back of having a summer where we've had to endure race riots and look at what's happening in Sudan and Palestine. And I'm going to stop listing because it will get exhaustive, and I don't want it to become comparative in that I'm diminishing anything that gets missed out. I think it's just a testament to the fact that it feels ubiquitous. It feels like anywhere that you might glance, there's something kicking off. So, in light of that, how did you respond this summer when it essentially crescendoed, maybe? Did you see yourself as an artist, first and foremost? What did that mean? What did it look like? What did it feel like? And if you'd prefer not to talk about yourself, did you see any examples from other people that you'd like to shed a light on? Yeah.
Cool. Is this me? Are we doing it in this order?
You're all being very orderly. I'm very surprised. This is a panel of rebels, and they're all,
Wait for it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we're all still processing. I think this is, and I'm just really thankful for this space, even just to, I think this is like the first open forum that I know in terms of like where there's been people of colour talking about this. I've been in other spaces like Labour Party Conference and Arts Council and all those sorts of spaces that have been predominantly sort of like white-led, and it's people don't want to have those discussions at the moment, so there's a lot of fear of having those discussions, or people think what happened. I'm going to call it organised right-wing violence as well, because I was calling it race riots. I mean, call it what you want, but I think there's just something quite a lot deeper going on in terms of when we're processing this. And we're living within the aftermath of sort of what happened. So I suppose I was decompartmentalising it in terms of like the different ways I was responding since like between August and now. I think one is like on a personal level, one is on like a community level, and then others like as a professional or as an artist or a leader of an organisation. So I'll try and be succinct and just address through those 3 points. But on a personal level, obviously just really, really difficult, really devastated, had experienced racism all my life, predominantly growing up in white communities, and has sort of seen it steadily on the increase since, we can chart it back to sort of like 9/11 and sort of like how the Tory government and then Labour government started to sort of create an environment, a hostile environment, as what they were calling it around certain times. So we've slowly been seeing it build and build. And Liverpool, is one of the oldest sort of like black communities, oldest Chinese communities. Liverpool's a racist place. We've all known it's racism, and it's very particular. It's very different from other places. So none of this was a surprise to us when it happened. And obviously it started off in Southport, which was quite close to us, but none of us were surprised. We were sort of waiting for it. We were expecting it. We've done projects over the years about bringing global majority young people to the north of Liverpool on exchanges, where it's predominantly white. South Liverpool, it's beautiful. We've got some people from Liverpool here today, so you know it. And then on the outskirts, the no-go areas, and they have been for years. So when this happened in Southport, it was like, okay, it's happening. So on a personal level, it was debilitating, it was scary, it was frightening. I was about to get on a train to see some of my Indian cousins in Lincoln, and I couldn't get on the train because in the middle of all that, me and my partner, we were looking at where all the demonstrations were happening around the country. I thought, we're going to have to go through that place and that place. How does it feel to get on a train? So that was on a personal, human level. It was fear, and I think a lot of us are still processing that. And I think in terms of a community response, in terms of how we were talking with other people of colour within Liverpool and sort of like nationally, we're sort of being prepared because obviously what happened after the murder of George Floyd, we've been looking at self-care and well-being for people of colour, since we've been started 18 years ago, but particularly over the past 3 years, what does that mean? What are the conversations what we need to have? What does self-care look like? So initially our response, how we responded, is actually what do people need? What do participants need? What do staff members need? What do actors need? We had a national tour going around. What's the risk assessments that we need to do now for those global majority artists who are staying in accommodation, they're getting on trains? And our offer as well was, if you want one-to-one support with a well-being practitioner or a counsellor, that's available for us as staff, as young people. And I know there's a debate about, as organisations, how far we go in terms of what's our responsibility in terms of well-being. And I think for us, what I'd say, if you're involved with community, it's different. And maybe, I don't know, if you're involved in community and you have been for a long time, I think you've got a responsibility to have those conversations, because obviously the NHS aren't going to provide that care. So this is what we do. We also provide food and spaces as well. That's another story. But it's like when things have been defunded to such a level, what responsibility do we have as arts organisations? So when this happened, that's the gear shift that we went. We also were providing spaces of joy, of music, and actually just what are those spaces that we need just to come together and not talk about this as well. So yeah, so that's what's on a sort of like a community level. Tell me if I'm going on too much as well.
No,
Is
we've
all right?
got time. Yeah.
You all right?
Yeah.
So that's ongoing, and I suppose what we've noticed since August is that this obviously hasn't gone away. There's been, like, in terms of like verbal, physical, racist incidents that I think NHS said that have gone up 40% in education spaces, in other spaces. So we're living and breathing what the aftermath of this is. And it feels like there's just been a whole like lens shift. It feels like what happened with COVID, we suddenly went into some sort of alternative universe. And then, but it feels like what happened in August, it's sort of accelerated the things that were there and happening already. So we've got examples where we've had young people in Liverpool who are being chased and targeted, artists travelling on a train from Liverpool to Manchester, sort of like being targeted. So it's like, what do we do? What do we do with this? And I think the first thing is what we're doing now, is having a conversation, because the places that we've been, the white spaces that we've been in, there feels like there's that was August, and there seems to be a mass sort of amnesia about it. So we've got strategies at the moment in terms of how we're dealing with it. Labour Party conference was a challenge. I was asked to speak on 2 panels at Labour Party conference, and you was at one of them. But I think there's a deeper story going on that isn't being addressed. And one is, if our leadership, in terms of our government, aren't managing it in a correct way, then that's going to have a trickle-down effect on terms of other organisations and sectors, not just arts, health, education, housing, etc. And it was a strategy that they didn't call it racism within the first week that it was happening. They called it thuggery and extremism, because they are nervous about losing white votes, so etc. And that support from those white, because they're scared. So the very fact that they weren't calling it racism or Islamophobia, then that just doesn't help with a mindset. So we're sort of like navigating what those spaces look like now, and we are actually just wanting to have these conversations. Name what it is. How do we look after our artists? How do we look after our staff members? And let's have spaces like this to talk about it, because, and this is my final point, I think allyship, yeah? Anti-racist allyship, I think, is what I need on a personal level. It's what I need in the community, and it's what I need on a professional level. We've done some work over the past couple of years in 20 Stories High in terms of what that looks like. There's an amazing book, I'm coming to the end now, called Me and White Supremacy. It's a handbook. It's written by an amazing woman called Layla F. Saad. And this is a handbook for white people written by a woman of colour to check their privilege. Because actually the hardest thing, we know what that right-wing agenda looks like, but the hardest thing is being in liberal spaces, in terms of those white spaces where people are liberal and they're not doing the work. It's not all on us. So this changed us as an organisation, and we're sort of speaking to other organisations, other people to read this and look at this. So we're not carrying the mental load. We're not having to do everything. And that's changed, because for years, in terms of our anti-racism, there was me, there was an artist called Nathan Powell, and we were having all those conversations about anti-racism instinctively. And what that's changed for us now is like, that burden isn't on us anymore. There's white members of our team go, you know what? Should we have that conversation? How you feel about it? So it's about checking in. Don't always get it right, which is fine, but it's a journey, and that's sort of like, that's part of it. So that's shifted. And then I suppose related to that, promise, the very last point, is related to that, the other part of the conversation is around organised right-wing violence, because they weren't just race riots. And this is the difficult thing that's hard at Labour Party conference, or how we deal with it as an organisation or as a country, because the UN report after those race riots happened talked about the relationship with Farage, Tommy Robinson, Trump, Elon Musk. So it was a very specific thing that happened, and it was organised. Labour had just got in. Yeah, so it could have been Southport, or it could have been anything. They could have chosen an incident, and just like the insurrection at Capitol, it's like that was planned, and obviously what's happening in London today. So it's like, and the UN report was saying, well, how do we police this as a planet? How do we police people like Elon Musk, sort of with the objective of destabilizing a country? Yeah, that's what they're doing. They're destabilising us, the same tactics that they use for Trump, for Brexit. So we're being managed digitally through that. So I think that's the zooming out. We can zoom in and look at what we do on a community level, organisation, but we zoom out, and this is the real, this is the real battle that we've got. So yeah, that's where I am with it. And leave fucking X now. Any organisation that works, that is publicly funded, that is a charity. You've got a responsibility for your staff, for your participants, whoever, to leave it. Because what will it take for people to leave X? Would it take Donald Trump owning X? Would it take Farage owning X? Elon Musk was on stage with Trump a few weeks ago, bouncing up and down. He's given millions of pounds away, dollars away to get people. So it's the digital sort of strategy of Musk is we just need to do that now.
Thank
right?
you.
I'll finish there.
Thank you, Keith. And just an invitation to anyone, because I know I'm feeling it, just a deep breath. Because, you touched on a lot of stuff there, Keith. Thank you for taking us from the micro to the macro. And, it's galvanizing to hear, but also can be triggering to hear how you've had to navigate what you've navigated. So
there is a lot of joy as well. I missed that because I suppose this is the first time that I've had to talk about it. But joy, there's got to be an equal amount of joy and music and dance and healing. And it's like how we navigate both of those things together.
Yeah. So who else on the panel feels that they want to go in? Yeah, we're breaking the cycle.
Cycle breakers, not repeaters, you know what I mean? So I guess the first thing that I want to say is that I'm very much not an expert in anything, you know, and I'm aware somewhat that I speak from a point of privilege with what I'm saying, but I'm just gonna talk the only way that I can. I'm just gonna be real. So when the riots happened, I was at a barbecue in Alexandra Park with an organisation called Mandem Meetup, which you should check out. It's a men's mental health organisation. But I remember my boy, he showed me on his phone, he was like, yeah, look, my brother's just got this video in town. Yeah. And I feel it's so easy sometimes when you see these fucking, these right-wing rallies happening here, there, and everywhere. It's some seaside town, and it's a guy with 3 teeth in his head, So it's very easy, I find, to distance yourself from it, it's over there. But when I seen it happening in Manchester, and in the fact that it was my friend's brother, and these guys who have got fucking balaclavas on, are approaching him, he's saying, wait, mate, I'm English, it felt a lot closer to home. And I don't always consider myself like a huge activist in a sense that I make noise about these things, do you know what I'm saying? I consider myself an activist in my daily life and the things that I feel I can affect on a personal level and with individuals. But I called my friend a couple of days later, and he's a white guy. I was like, look, I feel like I want to mobilize. That's what I said to him. And I don't necessarily mean going and fucking fighting them, which I feel is worth doing sometimes. But I just feel, maybe there's a space there where we could approach them and try and have a conversation with these people, innit? Try and put some fires out. I don't know if that's being too hopeful, but what this makes me think of really is, like, I came off social media recently. I just find there's a lot of noise on there. The algorithm just every day is beating you over the head with propaganda and hatred and all of this stuff that is going on. It could be stressful, innit? And I hear a lot from young guys this notion of like, as an artist, you're silent. Like I can hear your silence, sort of thing. And there's a pressure. The fact that you create, you maybe are told that you need to speak on these issues directly. You know what I'm saying? And I have faith that if people are silent on these issues, maybe it isn't their voice which needs to be heard, and the voices that need to be heard. Spaces like this, organizations, people will make space for those voices to come through. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. Even being on this panel today, I feel somewhat hypocritical, yeah? If you look now, I think you're all right, Keisha. We got Nike, Puma, Nike. People are boycotting these organizations because they fucking buy the funding fucking bombs from Israel. Do you know what I'm saying? We've got iPhones in our pockets. The cobalt from which is coming from slavery, which they're calling artisanal mining in the Congo. It stresses me out a little bit, and I just feel like personal, local, global, innit?
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Mahboobeh?
Thank you so much listening to Keith and Jordan. I've actually want to give a little activity to audience to think when I'm talking. I'm going to name a few words that all of you might hear a lot on the social media or on papers. But keep hearing those words and I'll come to them. So for the first word was lived experience. One of the first thing that when the riots happens, first of all, as a lived experience person, that word will come up in so many different aspects and contexts. For example, personally, I come from Iran, so any protest or riots which is violence is re-traumatized me and just kind of, oh my God, what is happening? In any format, it's kind of like it's protest, the people come out, they are angry. And also the topic, which was like something that I've been working on in the sector, where so many organizations and individuals around racism. So as an individual level, I've kind of felt disappointment of we've been talking about it for so long. And when I talk about me, I want you to think about the organization and individuals who wanted to bring about anti-racism practices. I'm sure we all heard about that word, anti-racism, creating safer space and all of that, which is great on paper. And it was the disappointment and the feeling of being so scared of, okay, now it's happening. Somebody can actually attack me in the street because I don't look like, I'm not a white person, I'm not English, I might not be that sort of British, that these sort of people expect me to be British in order to have ownership. So I think the first aspect of that disappointment was, I really hear you, that sort of level of maybe a pause, a space that you don't know what to do because it gets real, but at the same time, kind of like looking at all these elements of work that so many of these people have put into around anti-racism, raising awareness about the true aspect of British culture, because I looked at my network and I've received so many messages of care, support. So I'm in a network of people who are really care about like me. So I've kind of realized, okay, I'm protected in that bubble because we created with the community that sort of level of protection. But the bigger picture is the word system, and I want to talk about the neglect that system did to acknowledge the problem there. So for me, with my lived experience, I want to think about practical ways that we have to, and you touch on so many incredible practices that we shouldn't be only words on papers or on social media or fancy words that would be on a funding bid rather than practically seeing it happening. And so in that kind of way, for me, kind of now, we've been through that era that, for example, during COVID and death of George Floyd, we learned so many things. I think it was one of the times that so many artists managed to be heard because now everybody needed a brown and black person face because suddenly everything would come up. And we have to honestly talk about this because are you really acting because of really being disrupted and I have to do something because of the image of my institutions, or I want to raise awareness because it's all down to education? Or do I really care about creating some alternatives? So what we see from the death of George Floyd, Black Lives Matter movement, up to now is that it didn't work. Look at the riots. So we didn't learn the lesson. We have to acknowledge that. And after these riots, we're actually living in that era that you've mentioned. So we really have to be careful about now. We have to talk about it. we have to create actions, we have to make sure that we identify organizations, individuals who have models of work. Just if you check the resources and the work that has been done, it's there. So the next step is thinking about how that education can bring into the surface so we don't see these happening. As an artist, I think I've always had the way of expressions, like having exhibitions with my video art, expressing through my poetry and dancing. And it was a time that actually I couldn't feel anything in me because I was so disappointed. And I thought, what we've been doing for years, am I going to be heard? If anybody is going to do something, is it going to happen in the next 5 years? So actually, I've become more into really thinking practically to acknowledge that we have to learn, we have to address, and I think this safe space is a way, a method. That's why I've challenged you guys to listen to the words and identify the words that you hear in funding bids or fancy words, because in the British structure, we have all of that, but what practically is happening? Riots was the actual thing for us to see that it failed. The people can come into the street and say that you're a migrant, you're a refugee, you're an asylum seeker, get out of my country. And this is as simple, because if all those incredible, and also the money that has been put, just we have to be honest and check, because I'm one of the people that really want to look at the numbers of the, okay, this was the budget, but how much are we putting on developing work that would be really practical to not seeing the exact same thing in the next 5 years, and we're going to be back into the cycle. And I'm going to finish with the last aspect of we are currently in a very not good, I can use the word not good cycle in the sector of, for example, arts and cultural, because we are going back. There are so many incredible models, but when it comes to developing the work, organization have to fight again and again for money. So we're all going back. So we have to really identify where are the problems, get together, and it means that the higher institution have to be really active, the people with power, the people with money, because it's going to damage everyone. I think what was also like an eye-opening element was this damage is going to damage the whole society of Britain. So it's not like only, so brown and black people is going to be attacked physically and mentally. The damage is going to be way, way more than that on young people and the future. So we have to really bring the strategy, as you mentioned, and really have the conversation on all these areas.
Thank you so much. I think you made some really strong points there about the need for us to be proactive and resource and not be on the back foot of these things. And I know that was brought up, Keith, when we were at the Labour conference by a brilliant person that we know called Amanda Parker. She made a statement to Chris Bryant and was just saying, look, we know that when these things happen, organisations that are black-led or work with those global majority communities, they have to bear the brunt of this. They've got to do extra work. They've got to find extra money to deal with these things. As you were saying, oh my goodness, now I have to put my actor in a different route, in a different hotel, or they've got to take a different route. What are you doing as funders to acknowledge that and support that? Like, I'm here for the pragmatic conversation. I'm not here for your pity and your sympathy and your statements. Like, what are you doing? And I really appreciated her saying that. I'm going to briefly just say what my experience was, and then we'll move on to the next question. But yeah, I was really grateful that I was in Yorkshire. I was on a family holiday with my nieces and nephews, and I looked on the news and I was mortified, but I was grateful that they were not anywhere near what was happening. And I felt that pressure that you mentioned, Jardel. I was like, oh, do I go on Instagram? Do I write a poem? And I just thought, I can't. I don't want to. And I just played board games with my nieces and nephews. I was like, that's what I want to do. And I'm just grateful that I'm not anywhere near this. But I knew that I had to come home to it. So I came back to Manchester and I was like, right, okay, I need to be resilient. I need to not be scared. But I am scared, I am. But whatever. That is what the experience is when you're an artist that looks like me. You just always scared that something might happen. I could tell you the amount of things that have happened to me whilst I've been touring or whatever. But I had a dinner planned at Portico Library with a friend of mine who's amazing, Rachel Morehouse, who works for Art with Heart. And she messaged me that morning and she was like, Keisha, if you don't want to come out for this dinner, because there are some planned riots that are supposed to be happening in Manchester, like, I completely, don't worry. And I loved that she knew to do that. And my immediate response was, no, I want to go for dinner. Let's go for dinner. And then an email came through from Portico Library, and again, brilliant organisation. They were like, we understand that if you don't want to come for dinner today, you don't need to come for dinner. We'll immediately give you a ticket for next month. And when they sent that email, I was like, do you know what? Yeah. And I messaged Rachel back, and I went, I don't feel like having a dinner in defiance. I don't feel like stepping out of my house and being like, oh, yeah. I was like, I just want to go for dinner. So I'm going to stay in, actually. Can we move our tickets to next month? But then I was angry. I was aggy. So my partner comes in, and I'm angry with him because I went, do you know what? They've won. Because I was supposed to go out and have dinner. And now I'm in here, like, making it. I like making dinner, but I'm like, oh. So I was just like, and he didn't want to bring it up either. I said, were you going to ask me about this? And he was like, yeah, but I didn't want you to be upset. And I'm like, I am upset. I was like, I am upset, so let's just talk about it. So it was just, it was unavoidable. I was like, I don't know what to do. They've won because I'm scared and they fucked up my dinner plans either which way. And that's the thing that just felt really frustrating. So I feel like, particularly in this summer, I've not been behaving necessarily as an artist. I've been very selfish, actually, and I've just stayed in my bubble because that's all that I've got the capacity to do. And I'm not going to apologise for that. I'm just acknowledging that that was my response this time round. And I know another time round, some of my artist friends will be where I am, and I'll be ready to be on the platform and doing that thing and checking in with people and whatever. But I know that this summer I just couldn't. So that was how I responded. All right, I feel like we've got time for one more question. So I saw the brilliant Danez Smith this week at the South Bank. Wonderful poet. If you don't know about them, go and illuminate yourself. So Danez Smith. And they shared a poem called Craft. And a line leapt out at me from this poem. And it said, we think no one will hurt us if we're locked inside this beautiful thing. And they were talking about the way that they use their poetry to navigate the world. So I'll just repeat that line. We think no one will hurt us if we're locked inside this beautiful thing. So the question that I'm going to pose to you is, do you think that art can protect us? Yeah, Jardel, you want to jump in?
Yeah. Do I think art can protect? And it's a fucking fire line as well. You know, great. Dennis Smith, classic. Yeah, man. Do I think art can protect us? It makes me think of like two examples. And maybe these examples are quite removed from some of the things that we've been talking about today, but, you know. So I remember one of the sort of first things that pricked my ears up to poetry was looking at like some of these old war poets in school. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know, I was probably like 12, 13, playing a lot of Call of Duty. And it was a way that I could explore a battlefield through this safety bubble of poetry, you know. That's the first thing it makes me think of. And then it makes me also think of a poem. So that poem's called Craft, yeah? Funnily enough, there's a poem by a woman called Noor Hindi called Fuck Your Lecture on Craft, My People Are Dying. And the first line of that poem is, colonizers write about flowers. She goes on to talk about how, like, she says, Palestinians cannot see the moon from jail cells and prisons, things like this. And it's an incredible poem where she's talking about, you know, I guess, like we were saying, how there's almost, it's like there's almost a, I don't know, maybe I just feel it as a point of privilege to be able to ignore the pressures of speaking as an artist, you know, and just speaking of who you are. Yeah, I've lost my trail of thought, but no Hindi, fuck your lecture on craft, my people are dying. It's a very short, very beautiful poem. Check it out. It will explain things better than I can. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what was the question again?
Do we think that art can protect us?
It's interesting, isn't it? No. Sorry. I think it can help. I think it can help heal. It can bring joy. Don't think it can protect me when I'm on the bus. But it can give me something that nothing else can. So, definitely. Don't know, who knows if I do an intervention on the bus and start beatboxing. You know,
Yeah.
do a mind trick, Jedi mind trick, maybe. But yeah, it can definitely heal, and it can bring joy, and it can protect in certain contexts. I don't mean to be glib, but yeah.
No, I appreciate your honesty.
And I'm glad your dinner party. I didn't finish the little story when I said I couldn't get on the train, but you made me remember. I drove instead when I couldn't get on the train. During there was my partner. She said, "Yeah, Julia." She said, "We could do the 3.5 hour drive." So we did that, and it was that we can't let that resilience.
Yeah.
We can't let the bastards win, and it was beautiful. And my Indian cousins who live in a really white area, we went to see them, and my cousin's partner, she was playing in a ukulele band in a British fete with loads of Union Jacks everywhere while all these riots were going on, and she was on the so that was the non-duality. That was like the flip side. And when we're navigating these spaces of when do we want to talk about it, when do we not want to talk about it, when are we resilient and when are we not resilient, I think on a daily those things are changing for us as individuals. And it's like, and how do we check in with each other? It's like, just what do you need? But yeah, there's hope.
Yeah. Mahboobeh?
So again, I have to be really honest that so art and protection is not something that is in my background. Art actually for me is a fight. From my background, art is the fight that you kind of like go and do it in whatever you can, because sometimes as human we only have words, or like, you know, just you can hear words or read. So art is that other layer of, can be the other language. So art for me is a fight. When it comes to protection, I think for me, when as an artist you have that space to be able to express yourself, not to be under any pressure, this is where you feel protection. I think since I've been doing my art, and it will go up and down about with all the situation that we've been living, and I'm pretty sure that all the artists, every up and down, they kind of have to think about, okay, I have to express, but at the same time, even our silence is a piece of art, because you think about why that artist is silent, so it shows the power. And for me, the protection is where there is that safer space and the expression happen. So I think this is where we are protected.
Thank you. All right, so we've got time for my last little provocation. We've got 5 minutes left. I've been reading this book deliberately very slowly called The Anti-Fragile. Yeah, Anti-Fragile. And it says things that gain from disorder. And the author is called Nassim Nicholas Taleb. And I've been really enjoying kind of getting my head around this concept, but also it feels very validating. And he really sheds a light on artists and how he thinks that artists are a good demonstration of how to be anti-fragile. So I'm just going to read a little passage from it that helps to explain what he means by that phrase. And then if you've got any responses, I'll just open it up and we'll wrap it up there. Does that sound all right? So he says, some things benefit from shocks. They thrive and grow when exposed to volatility, to randomness, to disorder, to stresses, and love adventure, risk, and uncertainty. Yet, in spite of the ubiquity of the phenomenon, there is no word that is the exact opposite of fragile. So let us call it anti-fragile. Anti-fragility is beyond resilience or robustness. The resilient resists shock and stays the same, but the anti-fragile gets better. This property is behind everything that has changed with time: evolution, culture, ideas, revolutions, political systems, technological innovation, cultural, economic success, corporate survival, good recipes like chicken soup, the rise of cities, legal systems, equatorial forests, bacterial resistance, even our own existence as a species on this planet. So, what do you think about that concept? Benefiting from the unknown, from the chaos. Do you feel that as an artist you can do that?
Yeah, sounds like a good book. You know what I mean? Yeah, it makes me think of, like, I've had conversations with my friends where people sometimes ask, like, oh, what do you write about? You know what I'm saying? When, like, you know, it's such a stupid question. Do you know what I'm saying? I find it hard to answer anyway, you know. And it's a bit like you were saying before, you know, do I have to go and write right now? Should I jump on Instagram? Yo, just go and live life. You know what I'm saying? Go and live life. You know what I'm saying? Take the shots, and from there, that's where the goodness is. That's what needs to be written. You know what I'm saying? That's what it made me think of. You gotta live life, man.
Thank you. Mahboobeh, you don't have to, but just if anything came to mind.
So when you talk about this sort of the word fragile and anti-fragile, recently we've had the conversation about in a beautiful space called Learning and Liberation with Greater Manchester System Changers, and we talk about what we're learning, but what we're also unlearning. And we actually, you know, just based on what you read, I think for me, as an artist and as a creative person, I think I go back to the time that I came to the UK and I had to really understand the class system here, because I never thought of the word white before. And I came to a community in a country that the word white was something that I had to understand. And I had to realize, oh, so there is some people above me that I have to kind of understand. So, and I think that those times I was really fragile. So that so it goes through different stages, and that anti-fragile is also kind of, for me, is that question to myself, how am I coming out of that fragile? What I'm learning, I came into a position of being seen. So I'm in different panels, people listening to me, my name is here and I have an exhibition, but at the same time, inside of my heart, my chest is, okay, great, but I'm not where I need to be. And when I say I, is artist like myself from underrepresented background of this country that is our home now. So I think that anti-fragile is my learning, unlearning space at the moment.
Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, I was just beautifully read. I just loved hearing you do that. It meant, yeah, it really connected. Yeah, wow. Okay. I think fragility is a really interesting concept. I think, especially when it goes hand in hand with well-being and self-care. I think it's what we've been doing a lot of. Lots of people are talking about it. And I think as an organisation or as a practitioner, as an artist, there's conversations happening about sometimes do we go too far in terms of well-being, self-care? Do we talk about this too much? Even the notion of bringing it into the space might make us think of things that we might need that we haven't done before. So that's a really interesting conversation. And then so we are moving into the conversations around resilience, and actually what does resilience look like? How do we be more resilient as artists, and how do we turn up and do our job? How do we go out into the world and do that and not have every need met that we want? So we're in between those two spaces. So what you just said was brilliant. So what's the third space, and what's the thing that sits in the middle or beyond resilience? And I think what the word that came to mind for me, because I was closing my eyes and listening to you read, was about peace or serenity. And actually, what does that look and feel like? So it doesn't have to be either of those. And if we can't find peace, outer peace, or what's happening out there, because peace is it's a long way coming for lots of different contexts. So it's like maybe you're making me think about inner peace and how we can find that within our work and not always having to be either fragile or resilient.
Brilliant. What a wonderful way for us to sum up. Thank you so much, Keith. Thank you so much to the whole panel, Mahboobeh and Jardel. On the screen here, we've got a resource that we just want to direct you to, the Race Equality Foundation. They put together a really wonderful comprehensive list of resources that you can look to help you to navigate. It says specifically navigating those who felt that they were affected by the far right, the organised far right activity and the riots, but I'm sure it's way more expansive than that. We've run over just ever so slightly by 3 minutes, but I hope you don't mind. Thank you so much for sharing this space with us and to listening to our conversation. We made the decision that we didn't want it to turn into a Q&A, but we wanted to kind of model and give you the demonstration of us discussing something that felt quite sticky and difficult and emotional. So thank you for that. And if you do feel that you need to decompress or anything, please do not feel that you have to leave the space. This is an open social space. If you want to have a conversation with anyone, that is fine. Speak to staff members about that. But yeah, I hope you have a restful rest of your day and weekend. And it's been lovely to see familiar and new faces. Thank you very much.